It's Venus, not the planet, and Cupid, and today we're doing 25 new releases that you should be excited for in 2025. When I was researching this video, it was very hard to condense a list down to only 25 new releases that I'm excited for this year. Therefore, I had to make the very hard decision to cull that list down by only presenting the 25 books that I hadn't even heard of. So there are definitely books on this list, like obviously Calabasas by R.F. Kuang. You will not see it on this list because that's something that I've been anticipating, I've been waiting for. These are books that genuinely caught my interest just from hearing about it one time, so hopefully they'll catch your interest as well based off the blurb alone. My reading tastes, like I'm sure almost everyone else's, vary widely depending on what kind of mood I'm in, what kind of thing I'm interested in reading. So sometimes I do want to read something that will take my full mental capacity, and then other times I would just rather have good fun. And I believe that this first book will fall into the category of good fun. Cross My Heart by Megan Collins. Basically, this is a thriller that's about a woman who receives a heart transplant. After receiving that donor heart, she figures out who she thinks the heart belonged to, figures out who that woman's husband was, who's like a local celebrity, and she begins messaging him anonymously because she is convinced that because she has that woman's heart, she also is romantically tied to her husband. This next book is a horror called Feeders. This follows a woman who has goals of becoming an online influencer, but it just does not seem to be working for her. A morbid video of a classmate of hers dying goes viral, and through that she finds this weird secretive app and she begins posting on there, and she starts to kind of accumulate the following that she always wished that she had on the clear web, her realizing how far she'll go for that fame now that she has it. Next we have Root Rot by Saskia Nislo. This is a blurb that I feel like I could not even condense down if I tried, so I'm just going to read it exactly as it is. Come meet the liar, the secret keeper, the crybaby, and the rest. 9 children travel with their families to their grandfather's vacation property where strange things begin to happen. Eyes blink from the bottom up, mushrooms ooze blood, people's faces don't hang right anymore. Except they do, once you look more closely. Transformations warp the children's sense of time and place. The very land itself seems to encroach upon them. As the liar watches the children succumb, one by one, to an unknown fate, she must make sense of the absent stars in the night sky, vials of amber liquid that taste of milk, a funny little rope tied in knots. She's faced with a choice, join or resist. Only the choice is not so simple. Set in the grandfather's lake house as he continues to extend his property lines, and told in the eerie we of the children, Root Rot explores predatory family dynamics, the boundaries of bodies and home, and how individuals choose to participate in or push back against the structures that would harm them. So it just seems like a weird little book. That's all. Just like a weird little book. Playworld by Adam Ross follows a 14-year-old child celebrity in the 80s and kind of his journey through adolescence and, you know, obviously the struggle of privacy and whatnot being a child celebrity, also mixed in with the fact that he is being taken advantage of by a woman in her 30s that I believe is a friend of the family. And already when I was reading the blurb, I can like already tell that if I read this, it will make me so incredibly emotional. Luminous by Sylvia Park takes place in a unified future Korea where robots have been integrated into society as surrogates, servants, children, and sometimes even lovers. And it follows a family, and in various ways they interact with these robots. One works in like a robot crime division in like a police station. One is a robot designer, and one I believe is maybe dead or missing or something like that. And it's kind of like their journey to find each other again, obviously through the lens of these robots who are kind of citizens but kind of not. My Ex the Antichrist by Craig DeLuey is being comped to Daisy Jones and the Six in a way. So I think it's also written in that interview format, and it's about a rock musician who learns that her ex-boyfriend is literally the Antichrist, and she has to find a way to stop him before he grows powerful enough to end the world. Oh Sinners by Nicole Cuffey follows a journalist named Farouk who, following the death of his father, takes the opportunity to kind of embed himself in this really strange cult. I'm assuming for a story, but maybe it goes further than that. Who knows? Strange Pictures by Uketsu and translated by Jim Ryan is a work of translated Japanese fiction. I believe horror fiction as well. And from what I can tell, I believe that it has like these 9 weird pictures that it centers around, and each picture has like its own little story. Like, for example, it says a child's picture of his home contains a dark secret message. A sketch made by a murder victim in his final moments leads an amateur sleuth down a rabbit hole that will reveal a horrifying reality. So I believe like each of these 9 separate pictures have their own short horror stories, possibly. Polybius by Colin Armstrong follows a woman named Andy who moves to a small town after working in Silicon Valley. She takes a job at an arcade. A new game comes in, and kind of strangely a lot of people are lining up to play it. This also coincides with this weird virus kind of sweeping over the city, and people are acting very strange. They're having paranoia, hallucinations, and being like catatonic and angry. No one is coming to the town's rescue. Like, there's no humanitarian aid en route. So Andy and one of her co-workers at the the arcade take matters into their own hands. I am realizing, unfortunately, that the further that I go, probably the less accurate these descriptions will be. A Game in Yellow by Haley Piper follows this couple who their sex life is not doing too well, so they're kind of looking for ways to spice it up. I'm not really sure how this leads to the next thing, but they find this play called The King in Yellow, and it's really strange, and as you read it you kind of get sucked into this world, but it also is kind of making you go crazy, but you don't want to leave the world. Possibly something like you would rather be in the world of the play than the real world is what I'm assuming is gonna happen. What Hunger by Catherine Ding follows a Vietnamese immigrant family, specifically the teenage daughter who feels like she's in the shadows of like her smart, overachieving older brother who's going off to college. Something happens that we don't know about, and it kind of changes the daughter's world. The vibes that I'm getting is that this turns out to be like a cannibalism story, possibly even mother-daughter cannibalism, like they're a team, not that they're eating each other. I don't know how we get from one thing to the next, but that's possibly what's happening. I'm really excited to read and compare this to The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim, because from what I can tell, they have some similarities, and The Eyes Are the Best Part was Monica Kim's debut last year, and I believe that this is a debut as well, possibly. So I'm just excited to see. I was really excited for The Eyes Are the Best Part, and it kind of let me down in some ways, so maybe this will be the one, be what I was looking for from that book. You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White is about a trans young man aiding in the covert invasion of a parasitic alien species until an unwanted pregnancy puts his own future at risk. What more can I say? I really love The Spirit Bares Its Teeth by Andrew Joseph White that I read last year, and I am also interested in reading, I believe, his 2 other works that are out. Unless for whatever reason, like, I read both of those and I absolutely hate them and The Spirit Bares Its Teeth was like a fluke, which I really doubt it is, because I think his work is pretty consistent from what I've heard. I'm very excited to read this as well. At Dark I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. From what I can tell, this is about a serial killer who, I guess from her point of view, she's doing like mercy killings because she's only killing people who are suicidal and reach out to her. So there's that. Stag Dance by Tori Peters is a queer short story collection. I believe that they're horror and maybe a little bit of magical realism adjacent things going on. Yeah, they're short stories, so basically everything will fall within there, but they've all got different plots, so I'm just gonna move on. Overgrowth by Mira Grant is about a young girl who has been telling people, literally since she could talk, that she was not from this world. She's like, I am an alien, they're coming to get me, and everyone's like, okay kid, shut up. And then it starts to happen, and everyone's like, damn, okay. And that's basically it. Blackwood's Blue Sky by Eowyn Ivy is about this mom in Alaska, and there's like this weirdo freak guy who lives in the woods, and everyone in town is like, ooh, he's strange, and he only comes to town like twice a year to get his materials or whatever he needs to do. And somehow this mom and him meet and they start dating, and she moves her and her kid deep in the woods with him, and weird shit starts to happen. Who would have thunk it? Famous Last Words by Gillian McAllister is about a mom who is going to drop her kid off at daycare, and then she gets home and her husband's not there, and she's like, that's really strange. She gets this call and she's like, hey, your husband, there's a bank robbery and your husband's there. And she's like, oh my god, my husband, he's a hostage. And then they're like,
Lucy, stop it! Denial is a river in Egypt. Your husband is
the gunman. And obviously that's like really doesn't align with her perceptions of him, so it's like a thriller about that. The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I'm just going to read the blurb on this one. Holy work sometimes requires unholy deeds. Brother Diaz has been summoned to the sacred city, where he is certain a commendation and grand holy assignment awaits him. But his new flock is made up of unrepentant murderers and practitioners of ghastly magic and outright monsters, and the mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from them all in order to achieve its righteous ends. Elves lurk at our borders and hunger for our flesh, while greedy princes care for nothing but their own ambitions and comfort. With a hellish journey before him, it's a good thing Brother Diaz has the devils on his side. Hunchback by Sao Ichikawa and translated by Polly Barton is a work of translated Japanese fiction that is debuting in the US this year. It follows a protagonist who has a like physically limiting muscle disorder, and she spends most of her time in a care home and relying on a wheelchair to get around and a ventilator to breathe. Even though her physical abilities might be limited in some ways, she still lives a very verbose life online. She's like posting freaky erotica and trolling people really hard, and eventually she posts that she would like someone to be her sperm donor, and someone who's actually she knows in real life takes her up on the offer, and it just goes on from there. It's funny, it's about having your own autonomy, and from what I've seen in some of the reviews, it is weird and sexually strange, so take that as you will. I saw someone say they had to DNF it because it was too freaky. And I don't think like romance freaky, I think like freaky. The Dream Hotel by Layla Lalami follows a woman who is at LAX and she gets pulled to the side by TSA, and they're like, hey, you are going to commit a crime. And she's like, what are you talking about? That makes no sense. But we have all this software and data analysis, and we know that you are going to commit a heinous crime. So we are basically gonna jail you now. So she gets transferred to like this retention center where they're going to observe her for 21 days, I guess, to see like, well, is she gonna do this crime? I don't really know how they think that observing her in lockdown will determine if she'll do the crime, but whatever. She's only supposed to be there for 21 days and she ends up being there for months, so I wonder what's going on. Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake follows these 3 Nepo babies who've got this rich dad, and they are gifted and talented in the sense that they literally have powers and they're rich. And you would think that they would be like perfectly primed to take over their dad's big successful company, but that's not necessarily what happens. So one of them currently is like a scientist, and she literally just cured mental illness, whatever that means. Her boyfriend is a journalist, or her ex-boyfriend, and he's about to expose her for being a fraud. The second sibling is the youngest congressman in history, but his wife is about to leave him. And the other sibling is currently the world's most famous ballerina and also works as like a marketing exec, and is generally seen as like less impressive than the other siblings. I guess it's just about like gifted and talented kid burnout to depressed adult pipeline, and then also them fighting for their dad's inheritance. The Summer I Ate the Rich follows a Haitian American girl who is tasked with taking care of her sick mother. She loves to cook, and she cooks for these rich families, and they're always talking about, oh my god, the flavors, like it's so amazing, and the flavor is human flesh. So it's kind of like a take on old like Haitian folklore, and zombieism and all that kind of stuff, and I find it very interesting. So yeah. Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal is about a 25-year-old black woman who is taking care of her 16-year-old brother. They also have an older brother as well who is just really not helping, and she keeps having this dream that like something absolutely horrible, horrendous is gonna happen to one or both of her brothers. And for whatever reason, they're like out in the woods in this cabin, and then weird stuff starts to happen, and she's like, man, I wish I listened to my dream. Death of the Author by Nendi Okorafor is about an author who, her like most recent books are not selling, nobody's interested in them, her life is kind of falling apart, she's really just not in a good place. And one night she decides to just sit down in a hotel room and write a book that is completely different from everything that she's ever written. It's about like technology and AI and like science fiction drama about androids and the extinction of humanity. She's able to publish the book, and it becomes very popular. She's like catapulted to fame, and then her life starts changing quickly. This book, I believe, kind of is talking about the power that a story has to transform real life. So I'm not sure if it's going to be something like whatever she's writing starts to become real and reshape the world. Needy Little Things by Chanel Desamours is actually, I believe, the only YA book on this list. It follows a black teenage girl who has like these premonition powers where she can tell what people need. I don't really know what they mean by that, but she can just tell like what physical things people need. A friend of hers goes missing. Apparently this is like not the first time this has happened to her. So she's like, I'm not gonna let another black teenage girl go missing and get lost to the system, so she's taking it into her own hands to try to help find her friend. So she starts commodifying her powers, I think like kind of leasing out her ability to know what people need, and that helps but also hurts her situation in a lot of ways. So that's Needy Little Things by Chanel Desamours. That was 25 new releases that are coming out in 2025. If any of those books interested you, please let me know which ones you think you're gonna read. I will say, I don't know if I'm gonna read every single one of them because my TBR is already massive. However, there are some that I think 1000% I will read, and then there are a few that I think 1000% I think I have to read them as soon as they come out. There are books that I've been super excited for like over a year, and still when they came out I wasn't like rushing to read them, but there are a few on this list that I think right away I'm gonna have to grab.